Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. When Bro Rock's handprint started the pain-inducing machine, he had no idea the type of fear he was about to unleash upon himself. The crude tent pitched in the trench shuddered against the cold wind that howled outside the military outpost. Canvas walls snapped and billowed, casting strange, undulating shadows across the sparse interior. Brorock had chosen this location deliberately, far enough from the barracks that the officers wouldn't be disturbed, but close enough that the human screams would carry to the enlisted soldiers' quarters. A lesson in the price of infiltration, delivered in the universal language of agony. The floor was nothing but trampled mud, boot prints hardened into a rough mosaic, with puddles of stagnant water collecting in the deeper depressions. A single light panel hung from the center pole, bathing everything in harsh, unflattering light that emphasized the crude utility of this space. Information extraction required little in the way of amenities, just privacy, tools, and time. The human, Tyler, sat strapped in a reinforced metal chair bolted to a platform sunk into the mud. The pain helmet encased his head, a grotesque metal shell with dozens of cables sprouting from it like parasitic vines. Sneaking back to the control console where Brorock stood. Despite the circumstances, the human's face remained expressionless, his eyes flat and unreadable as they stared back at his captors. Not a flicker of fear, not a tremble of anticipation. Just waiting.
"Sir,"
Kragar began, his voice pitched low.
"this is truly unnecessary."
Kragar stood beside Brorock himself, his small frame almost comically diminutive next to Brorock's superior imposing height. The assistant's yellow scales were pulled tight against his body, a sure sign of apprehension amongst their kind. Those reflective scales were clear in the harsh light and scattered it in golden fractals across the tent walls. Brorock didn't take his eyes off the human as he responded.
"This assassin was captured less than 20 meters from the general's private quarters. Our security systems didn't detect him. Our guards didn't see him. Our perimeter alarms never triggered."
He flexed his clawed hand, the scales rasping together.
"It should be impossible to penetrate even the outer defenses without being noticed. Yet this human nearly reached the heart of our command structure. We need to know how."
Towering over his assistant by nearly half a meter, Brorock cut an imposing figure even among his own kind. His scales were a deeper amber than Kragar's, almost bronze in the artificial light, with dark striations that traced the powerful musculature beneath. The bone crown that marked him as a full adult male of the Reptarian species was more pronounced than his assistant's, the central spine rising a full handspan above his skull before curving back, flanked by two smaller protrusions. A network of old scars interrupted the pattern of his scales along his right arm and neck, badges of honor from campaigns long concluded. Unlike most reptilian species, the Reptarians possessed round pupils instead of slits, giving Kragar's eyes an unsettling mammalian appearance. The bone protrusions that crowned his head, three curved spines that swept backward from his brow, lowered subtly as he shifted his weight from one foot to another. Kragar's eyes darted to the human, then back to his superior.
"I understand the necessity, sir, but perhaps there might be other methods of extraction, something less—"
He trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. Brorock turned his massive head towards his assistant, his movements slow and controlled.
"We've tried conventional approaches."
He gestured towards a partially healed cut that ran across the human's forehead, disappearing beneath the edge of the pain helmet.
"This one is tight-lipped. The standard chemical interrogation suit produced nothing but gibberish and resistance. We need results, not excuses."
As he spoke, Brorock reached for a datapad resting on a small collapsible table nearby. The screen illuminated his scaled fingers from below as he called up the control interface from the pain induction system. Without rush, he adjusted the settings, sliding the main control to 30% capacity.
30% activation across all neural pain receptors,
he said, ostensibly to Kragar, but loud enough for the human to hear.
Most species begin to lose consciousness after 25. Let's see what this assassin is made of.
He pressed his thumb against the control panel. The effect was immediate, though far from what Brorock had anticipated. The human's body tensed slightly, muscles contracting beneath the restraints. A small tremor ran through his frame, and then nothing. No screams, no pleas, just a slight quickening of breath that might have been missed by less observant eyes. Tyler's lips curved upward in what Brorock recognized as a human smile, though the expression held no warmth. "Not so bad," the human said, voice only slightly strained. "Is this the worst you can do?" Brorock betrayed nothing in his exterior demeanor, but internally, shock rippled through him. Most species would be unconscious by now, nervous systems overwhelmed by the sheer volume of pain signals. Those who remain conscious would be begging for relief, unable to form coherent thoughts, let alone taunts, and he hadn't even turned the machine off yet. The pain continued to flow through the human's neural pathways without respite. Many interrogators would lose patience at this point, turn the dial to maximum in frustrated rage, but Brorock hadn't risen to his current position through impulsive actions. Patience was a virtue he had cultivated through decades of military service. He kept running the machine, observing with detachment as beads of sweat began to form on the human's forehead, trickling down to gather at his eyebrows before falling into the mud below. 1 minute stretched into 2. The human's breathing grew more labored, his jaw clenched tightly enough that Brorock could hear teeth grinding against teeth, but still no screams.
"Impressive,"
Brorock finally said, allowing the pain to continue.
"It takes considerable bravery to endure pain at that level without breaking, or perhaps it's just stubbornness."
With a gesture to Kragar to follow, Brorock began a slow, deliberate circuit around the chair. His heavy footfalls squelched in the mud, marking a circle around his captive as he spoke.
"We have all night, human. The pain inducer isn't even at half its potential yet. Is maintaining your silence truly worth the suffering that awaits you? Speak now. Tell us how you infiltrated our base, who sent you, what your mission entailed, and you'll spare yourself hours of escalating agony."
He completed the circle, coming to stand directly before the human again.
"You'll talk eventually. They all do. The only variable is how much you'll endure before reaching that inevitable conclusion."
The human's laugh was raw, scraping out of his throat like stone against metal. "If you want to hear me talking," Tyler said, "I've got a story for you. About that time a reptilian, different species from yours, killed a human during interrogation." His eyes, remarkably clear despite the pain he was enduring, locked onto Brorock's. "Might be educational." Brorock recognized the psychological tactic immediately, an attempt to shift the power dynamic, to establish control through narrative, perhaps to instill doubt or fear. Transparent, but potentially useful nonetheless. The more the human spoke, the greater the chance he'd reveal something of value, even inadvertently. He allowed himself a low, rumbling laugh.
"By all means," he said, gesturing expansively. "If you prefer to postpone the inevitable through storytelling, I won't object. If you enjoy suffering, we have all night for your tales."
Beside him, Brorock noticed Kragar trembling slightly, the assistant's scales fluttering in a wave of nervous motion. Irrelevant. He stopped his pacing directly in front of the human, studying those alien eyes. They were disturbingly unlike the eyes of any species Brorock was familiar with. White surrounds with colored centers. No nictitating membrane, bizarrely expressive. At present, despite the pain that must still be echoing through the human's nervous system, those eyes held something that looked unsettlingly like amusement.
"I'm waiting," Brorock said. "Entertain me."
Tyler licked his cracked lips, a tremor running through his shoulder that might have been pain or suppressed laughter.
"The Kragar," he began, voice hoarse but steady. "You know them. Bigger than your kind, green scales, not yellow. 4 eyes instead of 2.
Brorock knew them, a minor power in the Galactic Council, notorious for their territorial aggression and technological espionage.
"About 40 standard years ago,"
Tyler continued, pausing to take a shuddering breath,
"they abducted a human ambassador during what was supposed to be a trade negotiation. Snatched him right out of his quarters in the middle of the station's night cycle."
A bead of sweat traced a path down the human's temple as he spoke, disappearing beneath the edge of the pain helmet. His fingers clenched and unclenched against the armrests.
"The Kragar thought they were so clever. Used a dampening field to disable the ambassador's emergency communication. Routed their ship through 3 different jump points to confuse any pursuit. Took him all the way back to their homeworld, to a facility deep beneath their capital city."
Tyler's voice hitched momentarily, his body tensing as if fighting through a wave of pain.
"They wanted,
he grimaced, teeth flashing white.
"Wanted information about human military strategies, fleet deployments, weapon systems, command structures."
A harsh laugh escaped him.
"They used the devices not unlike your little helmet here. More sophisticated, perhaps. The Kragar were always proud of their neural interfaces."
Brorock remained impassive, though he noticed Crodar shifting uncomfortably beside him.
3 days, Tyler continued. 3 days of intense questioning. The ambassador held out for the first 2, but on the 3rd,
he shook his head slightly, the motion limited by the constraints of the helmet.
"The human mind can only endure so much." He broke. Told them everything they wanted to know. Fleet strengths, defense formations, response protocols.
The human's eyes had taken on a distant quality, as if seeing beyond the confines of the tent.
The Kragar were, jubilant. They had what they needed to launch a decisive first strike against the nearest human colony world. Their interrogators celebrated, transmitted their findings to military command. They left the ambassador in his cell, dead and used up.
Tyler's gaze snapped back to Brorock, suddenly focused with unnerving intensity.
"Want to know what happened the next day?"
Despite knowing he shouldn't, Brorock found he was curious.
"Continue." "The capital city woke to what they thought was a second sun in the sky. Just appeared overnight, hovering directly above the government district. Beautiful, they said. A perfect sphere of light, pulsing gently."
The human's voice had grown softer, almost reverential.
"By the time they understood what it was too late."
He paused, another tremor running through him, stronger this time. Brorock knew it was because the machine was still active, despite the human pretending it didn't affect him.
"Every Kragar who had accessed the information extracted from the ambassador, the interrogators, the military analysts, the commanding officers who received the reports, they just vanished. Turned to water vapor in an instant, along with a 3-kilometer section of the capital city. No radiation, no blast wave, just gone, replaced by a perfectly hemispherical crater."
Tyler leaned forward as much as his restraints would allow, eyes boring into Brorock's.
"So tell me, lizard man, do you really want me to spill my secrets? Are you absolutely certain you want to know why I was sent to kill your general?"
Brorock felt a cold sensation slide down his spine, an ancestral response he hadn't experienced since he was a hatchling. He mastered it immediately.
"You're lying," he said flatly. "A convenient fiction to delay your inevitable cooperation."
The human just laughed, the sound rattling wetly in his chest.
"Check the official files. The Kragar incident is public record in the Galactic Council database. See for yourself.
Brorock maintained his imposing stance for 3 heartbeats, then turned abruptly and strode back to where he had left the datapad. Kragar followed close behind, his breathing shallow and quick. The assistant's eyes widened as Brorock pulled up the Council archives and entered a search query for Kragar incidents involving humans. The results appeared almost instantly, accompanied by official documentation and incident analyses. Brorock felt his throat constrict as he scrolled through the report. The event had occurred exactly as the human described. The abduction during trade talks, the disappeared ambassador, and the inexplicable destruction of a portion of the Kragar capital the following day. The official cause was listed as energy discharge of unknown origin, but the Council investigators had noted the peculiar precision of the affected area and the complete lack of conventional explosive residue.
Ancestors' blood,
Kragar whispered, his voice barely audible.
He's telling the truth.
The assistant's scales had paled to a sickly yellow-white. His pupils dilated to nearly fill the iris.
Sir, we should release him. Send him back with apologies. If the humans can strike like this...
He glanced fearfully towards Tyler.
Do you want our capital to be next? All because we captured one of their operatives?
Brorock closed the file with a sharp gesture.
Don't be ridiculous. This human is not an ambassador. He was caught attempting to assassinate our general. He attacked us, not the other way around. The humans wouldn't risk interstellar censure by bombing a civilian population over a legitimate security action.
But, sir... Brorock silenced his assistant with a look, then returned to the pain inducer controls. Without ceremony, he slid the intensity to 60% and powered up the system. This time, the human's reaction was more pronounced. Tyler's body went rigid, every muscle straining against the restraints. A strangled sound escaped his throat, half laugh and half groan. Sweat poured freely down his face now, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. But even at this level, a setting that would have most sentient species begging for death, the human didn't break. Brorock had seen broken before, had witnessed the moment when a subject's will collapsed, and they became nothing but a vessel for pain, and the desperate desire to end it. Tyler wasn't there yet. His eyes remained defiant, even as they watered from the strain. Disgusted, Brorock set the datapad aside and stalked towards the human. He didn't bother checking if Kragar was following this time, his focus entirely on the captive before him.
This can stop,
he hissed, leaning close enough to see the individual beads of sweat forming on the human's reddened skin.
It stops the moment you tell me how you penetrated our defenses, why you targeted our general, and who sent you. That's all. 3 simple answers, and the pain ends.
Tyler somehow managed to laugh again, the sound choked and wet but unmistakable.
You want to talk, lizard guy?
He gasped, words fragmented under the strain.
I'll tell you another story about the time another alien tried to extract information from a human.
Brorock nearly struck him then, frustration building in his chest like pressure in a sealed chamber. Instead, he stepped back and gestured for the human to continue.
Your stories won't save you forever.
The human drew a shuddering breath, his restraints creaking as he fought against another wave of induced pain.
The Caraxian Empire, he began, each word clearly an effort. Big players. About 3 centuries back, before your time.
He paused, face contorting, then continued with visible effort.
Earth was new to the Galactic Council then. Still finding our footing. The Caraxians, they thought we were easy prey.
A violent tremor ran through the human's body, his back arching against the chair before he slumped forward, panting.
They abducted a human from a ground transport on Earth. A woman named Lila. They judged her. Important. Connected.
They were not wrong. Tyler's face had gone pale beneath a sheen of sweat, his lips bloodless as he forced himself to continue. The Caraxians, they weren't gentle. Not like you. The sarcasm in his tone was unmistakable despite his condition. They wanted to know. Earth defense codes. Planetary defenses. Another spasm racked his frame. Laya wouldn't talk. She didn't even know what they were asking, so they started removing parts. Fingers first, then a hand, then... He broke off, a sound escaping him that might have been a laugh or a sob. They realized she didn't know a lot, and they sent her back. Eventually. Missing a few limbs, as a warning. The human's eyes had grown distant again, seeing something beyond the confines of the tent. Big mistake. Turned out Laya was the daughter of a regional director, one who controlled a substantial arsenal of chemical weapons. His lips twisted in what might have been a smile, and who had very specific ideas about family honor. You're lying. I never heard of a Caraxian empire, Brorock said. Exactly. Tyler's gaze refocused on Brorock with startling clarity. The Caraxian Empire doesn't exist anymore. Funny thing, you never even heard of them, have you? Despite himself, a chill worked its way through Brorock's scales. That's preposterous. I've studied galactic history extensively. I would know of an entire empire being destroyed. Would you? Tyler challenged, his voice growing stronger as he pushed through the pain. Check your data again, lizard man. See what happens. When you push humans, too far. Brorock stood motionless for 3 full breaths, then turned on his heel and stalked back to the table with the datapad, ignoring Kragar's frantic whispers. Sir, please, we must stop this. Release him before it's too late. The search results on the Caraxian Empire loaded quickly. There was indeed record of a significant interstellar power by that name, dominant in the quadrant neighboring human space approximately 3 standard centuries earlier, and there was evidence, fragmentary but compelling, that their rapid collapse had coincided with their first, and apparently last, direct conflict with humanity. The official records were vague on the specific mechanisms of the Empire's fall, but noted with detachment that over 30 major Caraxian cities had experienced catastrophic atmospheric disruption events within a single standard week. The reports estimated casualties in the billions. Brorock scrolled through the data, feeling something uncomfortable settle in his gut, but he was a soldier, had been for his entire adult life. Fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. Certainly not fear inspired by an enemy's psychological tactics. He squared his shoulders and returned to the pain inducer controls. With a decisive motion, he slid the intensity to maximum, 100% activation across all neural pathways. The sound that erupted from the human was unlike anything Brorock had heard before. Not a scream of agony, as expected, but a manic, hysterical laugh that seemed to fill the tent, bouncing off the canvas walls and reverberating in Brorock's skull. Tyler's body contorted against the restraints, muscles straining to the point that Brorock feared they might tear, but still that terrible laughter continued. Kragar had backed away, pressing himself against the far wall of the tent. "Sir," he said, his voice high with panic, "how can he take this much pain and still refuse to speak?" The assistant glanced at the chronometer on his wrist. "We've been at this for nearly a full hour. I don't think his body will break with any amount of pain." Brorock scoffed, forcing confidence in his voice. "If the body doesn't break, the mind eventually will. Everyone has a limit." But as he watched the human convulsing in the chair, still somehow laughing through what should have been unbearable agony, Brorock felt the first genuine stirrings of doubt. What manner of creature was this, and what horrors might it bring upon them all if pushed beyond its considerable tolerance? Tyler's body tensed against the restraints, muscles contracting under the relentless assault of the pain inducer. Despite this, he managed to speak through the agony.
"I have another story to tell you," he said, voice strained but controlled. His breathing came in sharp, uneven bursts between words. "About breaking a human's mind." A visible shudder ran through him, but he maintained eye contact with Brorock. "Would you care to hear it?" The politeness in his tone was clearly deliberate, a mockery of their situation and the futility of their pain machine. Brorock and Kragar exchanged a glance. The assistant's scales had paled to an almost translucent yellow, while Brorock struggled to maintain his commanding presence. The tent filled with the sounds of Tyler's pain, ragged breathing, the creak of restraint straining against his movements, occasional sharp intakes of breath. After what felt like an eternity, Brorock finally spoke, his voice uncharacteristically weak. "Speak." Tyler laughed, a broken sound that dissolved into a series of harsh coughs. Then he fell silent, head lowering slightly, as much as the helmet would allow. For several moments, Brorock thought the human might have finally lost consciousness. But then Tyler's head lifted, and his eyes, bloodshot now, the whites veined with red, focused on Brorock with disturbing clarity. "Humans do break mentally," he said, pausing to breathe through a wave of pain. "But not like other species." His jaw tightened momentarily. "Not like you'd expect." He drew a shuddered breath. "Have you heard of the Joker? The Punisher?" His voice caught, and he swallowed hard before continuing. "Harley Quinn? Deadpool?" Brorock's brow ridges drew together in confusion. "I don't know these names," he admitted. "Are they human military commanders?" A sound escaped Tyler that might have been a laugh. "Fiction," he said, the word clipped. "Characters from other stories." His fingers gripped the armrests as another wave of pain visibly passed through him. "Embodiments of what happens when a human mind breaks, but doesn't shut down." Brorock didn't understand why they were suddenly discussing fictional narratives. Was this another delaying tactic, or had the pain finally fractured the human's reason? "What reference does human entertainment have to our current situation?" he demanded. Tyler's lips twisted into something that was neither smile nor grimace. "Everything," he said, the words strained. "Because when a human breaks mentally, they don't become less functional." He paused, gathering himself. "They retain almost all logical thinking. They can still plan, execute, fight." His breathing quickened, but his gaze intensified. "Like my boss, for example. The one who sent me here to assassinate your general." Brorock and Kragar exchanged another look, a flicker of anticipation passing between them. Was the human finally ready to provide the information they sought? But Tyler didn't elaborate on his mission or his superior's identity. Instead, he continued his narrative, words occasionally interrupted by grimaces or pauses to breathe through the pain. "My boss was a, civilian once," he said. "Passenger on a transport vessel." A tremor ran visibly through his shoulders. "Commercial route. Nothing special." Tyler's neck muscles corded as he tensed against another surge of pain. "Pirates attacked the ship. Reptarian pirates. Your species." Kragar inhaled sharply. Brorock shot him a warning glance, but his own spine had stiffened at the accusation. Piracy was a scourge throughout the sector, but the Reptarian government had worked tirelessly to eradicate those who tarnished their species' honor with such criminal activities. "They killed everyone aboard," Tyler continued, his speech punctuated by labored breaths. "Or thought they did, but they missed one, left him for dead, floating in the spacesuit amongst the wreckage." His eyes briefly closed as he worked through another wave of pain. "My boss." Brorock frowned, unsure where this convoluted tale was leading. He exchanged a confused glance with Kragar, whose scales were now fluctuating between pale yellow and sickly white. "What does this have to do with our general?" Brorock demanded. "Explain yourself." Tyler's eyes closed briefly.
his chest rising and falling rapidly. When he opened them again, they seemed somehow sharper, more focused, as if the pain had honed his consciousness to a fine edge. "My boss had a family once," he said, the words coming with a greater effort now. "Wife, 2 children." A muscle in his jaw jumped as he clenched his teeth momentarily. "They were traveling together on that transport. He watched the pirates execute them, one by one." Tyler's gaze bored into Brorock's. "His wife first, then his daughter, then his son." He took a moment to steady his breathing before continuing. "The pirates made him watch, made a game of it, placed bets on how his children would react when the moment came." Brorock felt a chill run down his spine. Such atrocities were beyond dishonorable. They were monstrous. No soldier under his command would ever. "He saw everything," Tyler continued, cutting through Brorock's thoughts. His words came slower now, fighting through the pain. "Just an civilian worker on a corporate mining operation. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous." A tight smile appeared briefly. "Until that day, until the pirates left him bleeding out, surrounded by his family's bodies." Tyler's head tilted slightly, the motion limited by the pain helmet. "Something broke in him then, but not in the way you'd think. He didn't... he didn't lose his mind." His voice strained but did not break. "He repurposed it." Brorock found himself leaning forward, drawn into the narrative despite his better judgment. "It took him 6 years," Tyler said. 6 years to recover physically, to build a new identity." He paused, gathering strength. "To gather resources, to form connections in the criminal underworld." He continued with visible effort. "And then he began hunting the pirates, one by one, taking them apart with the same care they had shown his family." A muscle jumped in Tyler's jaw. "Your general was one of them. The last one." He breathed deeply through his nose. "The one who always seemed just out of reach. The one who'd risen through the ranks, gained protection, became untouchable." The implications of the accusation hit Brorock like a physical blow. General Vexnor, a war hero, a decorated commander with an impeccable service record. A former pirate who had participated in the slaughter of innocent civilians. It was unthinkable, yet a cold seed of doubt had taken root in Brorock's mind. Tyler seemed to read his thoughts. "Check the timing," he suggested, voice weakening but still intelligible. "Your general's sudden appearance in the military academy 39 years ago, no background, no family connections, just appeared with enough credits to buy his way in." Brorock's hand moved unconsciously towards the datapad, then stopped. He didn't need to verify the human's claims. Not yet. There was a more immediate concern. "If what you say is true," he said carefully, "then your mission here is one of personal vengeance, not military aggression." Tyler's laugh was brittle. "Perhaps," he said, words slightly slurred from exhaustion and pain, yet not revealing information as clearly as they wished. The human's body seemed to sag against the restraints, as if the story had drained what little strength remained. "I'm not broken yet," he said, his voice fading. "But if I survive this, or if I die here, or even if you push me to the point of going crazy like my boss," his eyes lifted to meet Brorock's, "your species gets nothing out of this. Nothing but adding a little more craziness to the mind of a powerful enemy with a very particular skill set, and absolutely nothing to lose." The tent fell silent except for the vibration of the pain inducer and the ragged sound of Tyler's breathing. Brorock stood frozen, the weight of decision pressing down on him like a physical force. Beside him, Kragar trembled visibly, scales fluttering in waves of anxiety. With a suddenness that startled even himself, Brorock reached for the control panel and shut down the pain inducer. The constant noise that had filled the tent died away, leaving a silence that felt heavy and significant. None of them spoke. Brorock stared at the muddy ground, his gaze fixing on a puddle that reflected the harsh overhead light in broken fragments. Kragar remained motionless beside him. Tyler slumped in the chair, his body occasionally contorting with aftershocks of pain. Time stretched, marked only by their breathing. Brorock's measured and controlled, Kragar's quick and shallow, Tyler's gradually evening out as the effects of the pain inducer faded. It was the human who eventually broke the silence.
"I say you guys free me and give me back my gun,"
he suggested, his voice rough but remarkably steady.
"You can punch yourselves in the face and pretend I escaped. Knocked you out."
He shifted slightly, testing the restraints.
"Tomorrow, there'll be an opening for a new general. Maybe one of you gets a promotion. The universe keeps turning."
His eyes moved from Brorock to Kragar and back again.
"What do you say?"
The moment hung between them, taut with possibility. Brorock turned to look at his assistant, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in those round pupils. In all his years of military service, he had never considered dereliction of duty, had never imagined a scenario in which he would willingly release a prisoner, much less one who had confessed to attempted assassination. And yet,
"Accidents can happen to anyone,"
Brorock said finally, his words feeling strange in his mouth.
"Prisoners escape. Guards get overpowered. It's unfortunate, but not unprecedented."
Kragar nodded quickly, relief evident in every line of his body.
"Completely understandable," he agreed. "We did our best, but the human was unexpectedly resourceful."
Moving directly, Brorock approached the chair and began unfastening the restraints. The helm came off first, revealing matted hair plastered to Tyler's scalp with sweat. Then the arm restraints, then those securing his torso and legs. Tyler stood slowly, swaying slightly before finding his balance. Without a word, Kragar retrieved a small case from beneath the table and handed it to the human. Tyler opened it, checking the contents. Weapons, communication devices, various tools that Brorock deliberately chose not to examine too closely, before snapping it shut with a satisfied nod. The human rolled his shoulders, stretched his neck from side to side, then brushed ineffectively at the wrinkles in his clothing. Moving with surprising grace for someone who had endured hours of induced pain, he walked towards the tent flap. As he passed between Brorock and Kragar, he paused, inclining his head slightly. "Gentlemen," he said, and then he was gone, the tent flap falling closed behind him. Brorock and Kragar stood in silence, listening to the receding footsteps squelching through mud, waiting for the inevitable alarm that would signal the death of a general. But for now, the night remained quiet, just the noise of their thoughts bothering them.
"Did we just—"
Kragar began, his voice hushed with disbelief.
"Stop torturing our prisoner out of fear and release him,"
Brorock finished.
"It, appears we did."
They looked at each other, the full weight of their actions beginning to settle upon them.
"Did that really happen?"
Kragar whispered. Brorock had no answer for him. He turned to stare at the empty chair, its restraints hanging open like an unspoken question, and wondered what terrible new fear they had unleashed upon themselves, and what retribution might yet come for a general with a hidden past.